Welcome to our TechSphere Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're diving deep into something we all experience, that little voice in our heads, and the surprising ways it's shaped by sound.
You know, it's fascinating how we often overlook the impact of sound on our inner world. We tend to think of it as something external, but it plays a profound role in our self-awareness, emotions, and even our sense of self.
Okay, let's unpack that. We've all got that inner monologue, right? Sometimes it's a cheerleader, but other times it's our worst critic, full of self-doubt. I'm curious, is there a scientific explanation for why our minds tend to go negative?
Absolutely. Our self-conscious minds evolved to help us navigate social situations and avoid potential threats. It's like having an internal commentator analyzing our every move, trying to predict how others perceive us. But this constant self-evaluation can often tip over into overthinking and anxiety, particularly in our modern, hyper-connected world.
Makes sense. It's like my mind turns into a committee debating every text message and email before I hit send. But where does sound come into all of this?
That's where it gets really interesting. Research suggests that our brains are wired to assign meaning to sounds, even if those sounds are completely random. Think about it. A door creaking in an old house can suddenly feel ominous, even though it's just a normal sound.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I've definitely jumped in a car backfiring thinking it was a gunshot. So are you saying our minds create narratives around sounds based on our existing anxieties?
Precisely. Our self-conscious minds are constantly looking for confirmation of our fears and insecurities, and sound can provide that, even if it's totally unintentional. A simple cough in a quiet room can become a judgment of our character in an instant if we're already feeling self-conscious.
Wow, I never thought about it that way. So are we just at the mercy of our sound environment, or can we actually use sound to our advantage?
That's the exciting part. Just as certain sounds can trigger negative thought patterns, others can evoke positive emotions and states of mind.
Okay, give me an example. How can sound be used in a positive way?
Think about how a familiar song can instantly lift your mood, or how the sounds of nature can create a sense of calm and relaxation. These sounds tap into our emotional centers, influencing how we feel and perceive ourselves.
So theoretically, we could create sounds specifically designed to influence our self-conscious minds in a positive way, like a confidence boost on demand.
You're on the right track. While a sound generator for confidence might sound like science fiction, the underlying principles are rooted in science. We already know that certain sound frequencies like alpha and beta waves can induce specific brain states. Alpha waves, for example, are associated with a relaxed meditative state, while beta waves are linked to alertness and focus.
Right, like those binaural beats people use for meditation. But how exactly do those work? Are we literally rewiring our brains with sound?
It's not about rewiring, but rather about entraining brainwave activity. Binaural beats, for instance, use slightly different frequencies in each ear, and the brain perceives a third beat that corresponds to a specific brainwave frequency. This can help shift our mental state and promote relaxation, focus, or even creativity.
That's fascinating. So we're not just talking about masking negative sounds with positive ones. We're talking about using specific sound frequencies to actually influence our brain activity and mental states. This has huge implications for managing anxiety, improving focus, and even boosting our overall well-being, right?
Absolutely. And the exciting thing is that we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with sound and the human mind. Researchers are constantly exploring new ways to harness the power of sound for therapeutic and personal growth applications.
This is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I feel like we're on the verge of a whole new era of sound-based wellness. But before we get too carried away, let's pause here and dive deeper into some specific techniques and real-world applications in the next part.
Welcome back to TechSphere Podcast. Before the break, we were discussing some pretty profound implications of using sound to influence our mental states. What are some practical ways we can apply these principles in our daily lives?
You know, that's what I was thinking about during the break. It's all well and good to talk about brainwaves and frequencies, but how can we actually use this knowledge to manage our inner critic and boost our confidence?
One approach is to create what's called a soundscape. Think of it like a curated playlist, but instead of just music, you're choosing sounds based on the specific feeling or mental state you want to evoke.
So like if I'm feeling stressed before a big presentation, I could create a soundscape of calming nature sounds, or maybe those binaural beats we talked about earlier.
Exactly. You're essentially designing your own sonic environment to support the mindset you want to achieve. And the beauty of it is that you can tailor it to your individual preferences. Some people find classical music calming, while others prefer the rhythmic sounds of rain or ocean waves.
I'm definitely a nature sounds person myself. But what about using music to boost confidence? I know a lot of athletes use music to get pumped up before competitions.
Absolutely. Music has a powerful effect on our emotions and motivation. Upbeat music with a strong rhythm can energize you and help you feel more confident. Think about the music you instinctively reach for when you need a boost of energy or want to shift your mood.
Oh, I have a whole playlist for that.
Yeah.
It's like my personal confidence anthem. But what about those times when you're really stuck in a negative thought loop? Can sound help with that too?
It certainly can. One technique is to use sound as a way to interrupt those negative thought patterns.
How does that work? Do you just blast your favorite song and hope for the best?
It can be that simple. When you notice those negative thoughts creeping in, try shifting your focus to a piece of music or a sound that you find particularly engaging or uplifting. It could be anything from a catchy pop song to a soothing nature soundscape.
So it's like using sound as a distraction technique.
It's more than just distraction. By consciously shifting your attention to the sound, you're essentially interrupting that negative thought loop and giving your mind something positive to focus on. It's like hitting the reset button on your mental state.
That's a great analogy. But this is all starting to sound a bit like mental training. Using sound as a tool to shape our thoughts and emotions. Is that accurate?
You're exactly right. It's about becoming aware of how sound influences your inner world and then using that knowledge to create a more positive and empowering mental environment. It's like any other skill. The more you practice, the better you become at it.
So it's not just about passively listening to music or sounds. It's about being intentional and using sound as an active tool for personal growth and self-care.
You got it. And remember, it's a journey of exploration and discovery. Experiment with different sounds, observe how they make you feel, and keep refining your approach. What works for one person might not work for another, so it's all about finding what resonates with you.
This is incredibly empowering. It's like having a whole new set of tools to manage our inner world and navigate the ups and downs of life. But before we move on, are there any potential downsides or things we should be aware of when using sound in this way?
That's a great question, and it's important to be mindful. While sound can be a powerful tool for positive change, it's not a magic cure-all. It's essential to use it responsibly and in conjunction with other healthy habits.
Give me an example. What are some things to keep in mind?
Well, if you're using sound to manage anxiety, for example, it's important not to become overly reliant on it as a coping mechanism. Addressing the underlying causes of your anxiety, whether through therapy, lifestyle changes, or other means, is crucial.
That makes sense. It's about using sound as a complementary tool, not a replacement for other forms of self-care.
Exactly. And it's also worth noting that some people are more sensitive to sound than others if you find that certain sounds are triggering or overwhelming. Listen to your body's cues and adjust accordingly. Not all sounds are created equal, and what works for one person may not work for another.
So it's about being aware of our own individual responses to sound and using it in a way that feels safe and comfortable.
Precisely. And like with any new practice, it's always a good idea to start slowly and gradually incorporate more as you feel comfortable.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I'm already thinking about all the ways I can use sound to manage my own inner critic and create a more positive mental space.
I'm glad to hear that. It's truly fascinating how much power we have to shape our inner world through sound.
Absolutely. And this leads me to my final question. What would you say to someone who's just starting to explore the world of sound and its impact on the mind?
I'd say embrace the exploration. Don't be afraid to experiment with different sounds, frequencies, and techniques. And most importantly, have fun with it. Discovering the sounds that resonate with you and help you feel your best can be a truly rewarding experience.
Beautifully said. Well, folks, that concludes our deep dive into the fascinating world of sound and the human mind. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and learned some valuable insights along the way.
Remember, the power to shape your inner soundscape and create a more positive and fulfilling life is within you.
Thanks for tuning in to TechSphere Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. Until next time, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep those sound waves flowing. Welcome back to TechSphere Podcast. We've been on quite a journey today, exploring this fascinating connection between the human mind, self-consciousness, and the power of sound.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly insightful conversation. We've uncovered how sound can trigger those self-conscious anxieties, but also how we can harness its power to cultivate confidence, focus, and overall well-being.
It really feels like we've uncovered a hidden dimension of self-care. Like we have the whole sonic toolkit we never knew we had.
That's a great way to put it. By understanding how sound influences our inner world, we gain a powerful new lens for understanding our thoughts, emotions, and ultimately our sense of self.
I'm already thinking about all the ways I can apply this in my own life, creating those personalized soundscapes, using music to boost my mood, and even intentionally interrupting those negative thought patterns with sound. It's empowering to know that we don't have to be at the mercy of our inner critic or a chaotic sound environment.
Absolutely. And remember, it's all about finding what works best for you. Experiment with different sounds, observe how they make you feel, and refine your approach over time. There's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to sound and the human mind. What works for one person may not work for another.
Yeah, it's like we're all DJs of our own mental space, creating the perfect soundtrack for our lives.
I love that analogy. And just like a skilled DJ, we can learn to mix and blend different sounds to create the desired effect, whether it's calming, anxiety-boosting focus, or simply enhancing our overall sense of well-being.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's exciting to realize that we have more control over our inner world than we often give ourselves credit for.
Absolutely. And the more we explore this fascinating intersection of sound and the human mind, the more possibilities we unlock.
Before we wrap up, I want to thank you for sharing your incredible insights with us today. It's been a true pleasure diving deep into this topic with you.
The pleasure has been all mine. It's always a joy to explore these cutting-edge areas where technology, human consciousness, and well-being converge.
Oh, folks, that concludes our deep dive into the fascinating world of the human mind, self-consciousness, and the power of sound. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and learned some valuable insights along the way. Thanks for tuning in to TechSphere Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your friends. Until next time, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep those sound waves flowing.